Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is your essential daily current affairs briefing, specifically designed for you, the UPSC aspirant. Today is June 24th, 2025, and this is part one. Our mission, as always, is to cut through the noise. We take a stack of the latest sources, reports, even your own notes, and pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge. The goal, to help you get well-informed, quickly, and thoroughly. Today, we're covering a lot of ground. We'll be looking at some evolving social challenges, critical geopolitical shifts, and also key developments in science and governance. Now, for many of you, some of this might feel familiar, maybe a good revision to reinforce what you already know, but other parts will definitely offer some fresh, crucial insights. So let's jump in. We promise a fascinating conversation packed with surprising facts and, importantly, the context you need to connect the dots. Okay, let's unpack this. Our first deep dive takes us into a concerning social phenomenon, the rising manosphere. What exactly are we talking about here?
Right. The Manosphere, it's really an umbrella term. It covers this network of online communities, blogs, forums, social media groups, and their core message. It promotes a very narrow, often aggressive form of masculinity. Critically, it pushes this false narrative that feminism and gender equality somehow harm men's rights. It's fundamentally rooted in, well, misogyny and anti-feminist rhetoric. And it uses digital platforms very effectively to spread hate and reinforce some pretty deep gender biases.
That sounds quite toxic. What do you think are the underlying reasons? I mean, what's drawing young men specifically towards these communities?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? There are several factors, and they often overlap. First, there's growing social isolation. People, especially young men, are looking for validation, for a sense of belonging, and these online spaces offer a version of that. Then there's digital anonymity. It lowers the bar, reduces the perceived social or even legal consequences for spreading hateful stuff.
So it feels safer to express extreme views online.
Exactly. Plus, you have social media algorithms. They're designed for engagement, right? And controversial, often harmful narratives tend to get amplified. They create echo chambers. And finally, don't underestimate the masculinity influencers. These figures actively promote regressive gender roles, often portraying men as victims of feminism. That message can really resonate with guys who feel alienated or left behind.
That mix sounds pretty potent. Here's where it gets really interesting, or perhaps concerning. What's the real-world impact? Does this online activity actually translate into offline harm?
Oh, absolutely. It definitely spills over. One major impact is making digital spaces less safe for women and girls. Think back to things like the Gamergate harassment campaign. That was a prime example. Beyond that, it actively works to undermine gender equality. It distorts the public's understanding of these issues, erodes support for women's rights. And yes, it fuels real-world harm.
Like what kind of harm?
Everything from verbal harassment, discrimination in the workplace, right up to, tragically, actual violence against women. It also has a chilling effect, reducing women's participation in public life, politics, media, academia. That's a loss for everyone.
It really is. So what's being done? Are there initiatives globally or in India trying to push back against this?
Yes, thankfully there are efforts underway. Globally, you have frameworks like the Beijing Platform for Action, which goes way back to 1995, calling for balanced media portrayals. More recently, the UNFPA has its Making All Spaces Safe initiative targeting tech-facilitated gender violence. And the EU's Digital Services Act is also significant. It explicitly prohibits misogynistic content.
And what about here in India?
In India, we have the Indecent Representation of Women Prohibition Act from 1986, which is relevant even for digital media. The IT rules of 2021 are also key. They mandate platforms remove objectionable content within 24 hours. And there's the Digital Shakti initiative, which focuses specifically on digitally empowering women and girls, trying to create safer online spaces for them.
So it's a combination of legal frameworks and empowerment initiatives.
Exactly. It needs both. It shows there's recognition of the problem, but effective implementation and keeping up with how fast digital spaces change, that remains the challenge.
Well, a constant challenge, it seems. Okay, let's pivot now from social dynamics to global geopolitics. Specifically, let's look at the Strait of Hormuz and some recent pretty alarming developments there.
Yes, things have certainly heated up. Following U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities under the name Operation Midnight Hammer, I believe Iran's parliament quickly approved a proposal to potentially close the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. strikes targeted key sites like Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordow. These are central to Iran's nuclear program, which you'll remember ramped up after the U.S. pulled out of the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, back in 2018.
And the weapons used suggest a serious intent. B-2 bombers, bunker busters?
Precisely. B-2 stealth bombers, GBU-57 bunker busters, those are massive bombs designed to penetrate deep underground and Tomahawk missiles. So it's a significant show of force.
Okay, let's unpack this. The strait itself. Remind us why this particular waterway is so incredibly critical.
It's basically a global energy artery. The Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and then the open Arabian Sea. It's about 167 kilometers long, but the crucial part is how narrow it gets, just 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, a real choke point.
33 kilometers, wow. So what happens if that choke point gets closed? What are the global ripple effects?
The impact would be huge and immediate. We're talking about roughly 20% of the entire world's oil supply passing through there, plus a similar amount of liquefied natural gas, LNG. It's the only practical sea route for major Gulf oil producers, think Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, Qatar, to get their energy to global markets. Closing it, or even seriously disrupting it, would cause energy prices to skyrocket instantly, triggering inflation, destabilizing economies worldwide.
That's a global economic nightmare scenario. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for India. What's the direct hit for us?
It hits India very hard. About 40% of India's crude oil imports and nearly 50%, half of our natural gas imports come through the Strait of Hormuz.
40 and 50%. Those are huge numbers.
They really are. As the world's third largest oil importer, any major price spike drastically increases our import bill. That widens the trade deficit, puts pressure on the rupee, strains our financial markets. It poses a direct threat to India's economic stability and energy security. Keeping that strait open is vital for us.
Absolutely vital. Okay, staying in the geopolitical realm, but shifting focus slightly. Let's talk about China's growing influence in India's neighborhood. There was a recent trilateral meeting, China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh.
Yes, in Kunming, China. And this is significant because it's the second such trilateral China has hosted recently. In South Asia, they had one with Afghanistan and Pakistan before. It clearly signals China's rising diplomatic clout in the region. It looks very much like a conscious strategy to cultivate a ring of friendly or aligned states around India.
And from India's perspective, what are the main worries about this? What specific concerns does this raise?
There are several key concerns for New Delhi. First, it ties into the expansion of China's Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI. Both Bangladesh and Pakistan are major BRI partners. And remember, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, a flagship BRI project, runs through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. That's a direct sovereignty challenge for India.
Right. The CPEC issue is a major one.
Definitely. Second, it feeds into worries about China's string of pearls strategy, the idea they're trying to encircle India with strategic ports and bases. They already have access to Gwadar in Pakistan, Hambantota in Sri Lanka. Gaining potential access in Bangladesh would significantly increase the strategic pressure on India's eastern flank.
So encirclement and strategic pressure. What else?
Third, there's the risk of what you might call parallel regionalism. If China successfully creates alternative platforms like this trilateral, it could potentially reduce the relevance and influence of India-led regional groups, like BIMSTEC, for example.
Undermining existing structures.
Exactly. And finally, it represents an erosion of India's neighborhood-first policy. It suggests China is stepping into a perceived leadership vacuum in the region, challenging India's traditional position.
So putting all that together,
Yeah.
what does this mean for India's regional diplomacy moving forward? What's the best approach?
Well, it underscores the need for India to really double down on prioritizing genuinely friendly, mutually beneficial relationships with all its neighbors. Make partnership with India the more attractive option. And at the same time, India needs to actively strengthen the regional groupings it leads, like BIMSTEC, making them more effective and delivering tangible benefits to member states. Show, don't just tell, the value of Indian leadership.
That makes sense. A proactive and constructive approach. Okay, let's shift from these big geopolitical currents to something deeply personal and ethical. Assisted dying.
Yes, this is a topic generating intense debate globally. The big news recently is the UK House of Commons approving the Terminally Ill Adults End-of-Life Bill, also known as the Assisted Dying Bill. It's important to be clear on terms here. Assisted dying, under this bill, means a terminally ill patient gets prescribed lethal drugs by a doctor, but self-administers them. This is different from euthanasia, where the doctor directly administers the drugs to end the patient's life. Okay, that distinction is important. And what are the conditions in the UK bill? The key stipulations are: the person must be an adult over 18, diagnosed with a terminal illness, giving them less than 6 months to live, and crucially, they must be judged to be of sound, competent mind to make the decision.
Okay, Let's unpack this.
Yeah.
The ethical dilemmas here are just enormous, aren't they? Touching on really fundamental values.
Profoundly so. One core tension is between respecting a patient's autonomy, their right to choose, versus the principle of the sanctity of life. Think J.S. Mill's idea of reflective autonomy versus deeply held religious beliefs that life is sacred and not ours to end.
That's a fundamental clash.
It is. Then there's the conflict within medical ethics. The traditional duty of a doctor is to preserve life. Assisted dying seems to contradict that, creating a huge moral burden for physicians. The Hippocratic Oath's do no harm principle is central here.
What about potential misuse?
That's another major concern. The risk that decisions might be influenced by external pressures or vested interests. Could financial considerations, or even things like organ transplantation needs, subtly influence things?
And the voluntariness aspect.
Right, is the choice truly voluntary? There's a real fear, especially among disability rights groups, that vulnerable people might feel pressured socially or economically to choose assisted dying if they feel like a burden, undermining true free will.
Incredibly complex ethical terrain. Okay, let's move from these deep ethical questions to the perhaps more mundane but equally critical area of political governance and political financing in India.
Yes, the Association for Democratic Reforms, ADR, recently released a report on compliance after the 2024 general elections, and it wasn't a pretty picture. Widespread non-compliance, basically. Many political parties submitted their expenditure statements, very late delays, up to 232 days in some cases. Some didn't report at all. And the rules are clear. 90 days after a general election, 75 days after an assembly election. This lack of timely reporting really hinders transparency.
That level of noncompliance is striking. But what's fascinating here is the sheer scale of the issues in India's political financing overall, right? It goes beyond just late filing.
Oh, absolutely. The 2024 Lok Sabha election was reportedly the most expensive election globally ever. Expenditure estimated around 1.35 lakh crore. That's just staggering.
1.35 lakh crore.
It's huge. And there's a massive transparency gap. Looking back from 2004-05 to 2022-23, roughly 60% of contributions of the 6 major national parties came from undisclosed sources. 60%.
So we don't know where most of the money is coming from.
Largely, no. Then there's the disparity. National parties collected something like 93% of the total funds declared in the 2024 elections. This raises serious questions about unequal influence and whether it's a level playing field. And finally, there's clear evidence of overspending. The ECI sets limits 95 lakh for Lok Sabha, 40 lakh for assembly constituencies. But actual spending often goes way beyond that, sometimes using third-party campaigners or exploiting loopholes in the model code of conduct. Wealth becomes a huge factor. Look at Madhya Pradesh. 44% of winning candidates had declared assets over 5 crore.
So what does all this mean for the health of our democracy, for fairness and transparency?
It means we have significant challenges. Wealth seems to be playing an outsized role, transparency is lacking, and the playing field isn't level. It potentially undermines the principle of one person, one vote if financial power becomes the dominant factor.
What are some potential solutions being discussed? What are the recommendations?
Several ideas are on the table. The Law Commission suggested capping the total expenditure by political parties, not just candidates. The Indrajit Gupta Committee, way back in 1998, talked about state funding of elections to reduce disparities. ADR suggests limiting all expenditure to traceable methods like check, DD, or RTGS to curb black money. Other measures include more rigorous monitoring of party spending by observers and full public disclosure of all donor details, regardless of the amount.
Seems like comprehensive reforms are needed. Okay, that's a hefty look at ethics and governance. Now, let's switch gears completely for some rapid-fire insights across science, environment, and culture. Quick essential updates. First up, coffee. What's brewing in India's coffee exports?
Good news there. India's coffee exports have surged, jumping about 125% over the last 11 years, reaching roughly USD 1.8 billion. Remember, it's a tropical plant. Arabica dominates about 75% of our production, but Robusta is also significant.
And conditions.
Right. Arabica likes it cooler, 15-24 degrees C with plenty of rain, 150-300 centimeters. Robusta prefers it warmer, 24-30 degrees C. Globally, Brazil's the giant. In India, Karnataka is king, followed by Kerala and Tamil Nadu, mostly grown in the western and eastern Ghats.
Okay, next. Erect Kosh. What's the development?
The Health Ministry is planning to integrate the National Rare Donor Registry with the e-Rajkosh platform. That registry was created by the National Institute of Immunohematology in Mumbai. Kosh itself, launched back in 2016, is the online blood bank management system under the National Health Mission. It tracks availability, camps, standards. Integrating the rare donor list should make finding crucial rare blood types much faster.
Makes sense. Moving to the digital world, the Digital Markets Act, DMA, in the EU, what's Google doing?
Alphabet's Google is proposing changes to its search results. This is to comply with the EU's DMA. The DMA from 2022 targets gatekeepers, the huge digital platforms like search engines, app stores. The goal is to make them act more fairly, allow for competition. For consumers, it should mean more choice, easier switching, maybe fairer prices. It's a big deal for regulating big tech.
Interesting. Wildlife tech now, K-Trat and snow leopards.
Yes. Scientists are highlighting K-Trat, that's Camera Trap Data Repository and Analysis tool. It uses AI and neural networks to automatically sort through thousands of camera trap photos to identify Himalayan snow leopards. It's a huge time saver and boosts accuracy for monitoring these elusive animals. We see similar tech for tigers with M-stripes and AI systems like Simba being used for lions. Conservation tech is really advancing.
Amazing. And this sounds unique. Guada negative blood type.
Truly fascinating. A woman in Guadeloupe, French Caribbean, is the only known person with a newly identified blood type dubbed Guada negative. It's now officially ISBT042. It's defined by the absence of the EMM antigen, which is usually present on almost everyone's red blood cells. It's now the 48th recognized blood group system worldwide. Shows how much we're still learning about human biology.
Incredible. International Day of Yoga, what was this year's theme?
The 11th International Day of Yoga was just celebrated. The theme was Yoga for One Earth, One Health. Remember, the UN declared June 21st as the day back in 2014, linking it to the summer solstice. Yoga comes from the Sanskrit yuj, meaning to unite mind and body. Sage Maharshi Patanjali systematized it in the Yoga Sutras, and UNESCO recognizes yoga as intangible cultural heritage.
Let's look outwards to space, the Sculptor Galaxy.
Researchers have created a super detailed map of the Sculptor Galaxy using the MUSC instrument on the Very Large Telescope in Chile. It's also called NGC 253, or the Silver Queen Galaxy. It's relatively close, 7.5 million light-years away. Discovered by Caroline Herschel way back in 1783, it's a large spiral galaxy seen almost edge-on. Like our Milky Way and Andromeda, it's actually a barred spiral, surrounded by a halo of old stars and dark matter. Mapping helps understand how galaxies like ours form.
Back to Earth, agriculture, nano-fertilizers.
Big move by IFSCO, Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative Limited. They're setting up their first overseas nano-fertilizer plant in Brazil. This follows their launch of the world's first nano-liquid urea in 2021 and nano-DAP in 2023. Nano-fertilizers encapsulate nutrients in tiny particles less than 100 nanometers. This allows for controlled, slow release, big benefits, less soil-water contamination, better nutrient uptake by plants, so it's cost-effective and more sustainable. A potential game-changer for farming.
And finally, the Subarnarekha River. There were recent floods.
Yes. Sadly, flash floods caused havoc in Balasore, Odisha. The name Subarnarekha literally means golden line, Subarna Gold Rekha Line. It originates near Ranchi in Jharkhand. Its basin covers Jharkhand, Odisha, and West Bengal before flowing into the Bay of Bengal. Key tributaries are the Kanchi, Karkari, and Kurkai. The famous Hundred Falls is on this river. And importantly, it's designated National Waterway 96.
And that wraps up our rapid fire round and indeed our entire deep dive for today. It's quite something to look back on, the range we've covered, from the social complexities of the Manosphere through the high-stakes geopolitics around Hormuz and China's regional moves, the profound ethics of assisted dying, the critical state of political finance, and then all those fascinating quick updates. Each piece adds to that bigger picture of current affairs.
Absolutely. And what strikes me is how interconnected it all is. These aren't isolated events. Understanding the manosphere helps understand political shifts, economic pressures, influence ethical debates. Geopolitical tensions impact everything down to energy prices. It gives you a much more sort of holistic view. And maybe that leaves you, the listener, with a thought. How might these different developments, the social shifts, the strategic rivalries, the technological advances, how might they converge and shape the world, especially India's place in it, over the next decade or so?
That's a great question to ponder. Well, that was your essential deep dive into the Daily UPSC Current Affairs for June 24th, 2025, Part 1. We really hope this helped you stay informed and feel a bit more ahead of the curve. If you found this useful, please do like and subscribe for more deep dives designed to help you connect those all-important dots. Join us next time for another exploration of the information that truly matters. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning,